Welcome back to 18. Let's take a look at our logic today. So in your book, there's two sections on logic. I'm going to kind of pick and choose and merge them and give you all the important stuff. So starting out, we need to define what is a conditional statement. Okay, a conditional statement has a condition in play. So if something is true, a certain condition, if the water is hot, if the temperature outside is 90 degrees, if the sky is blue, if the school floods, whatever. Okay, so the condition shows up at the beginning of the sentence. If this condition is true, then something else is true as a result. So I always say a conditional statement is an if-then statement. Just to bring in a little bit more vocab, what comes after the word if is the hypothesis. So if the temperature outside is 120 degrees, okay, the hypothesis would be the temperature outside is 120 degrees. You do not include the word if in the hypothesis. Okay, if the temperature outside is 120 degrees, then all after school activities will be canceled. So the conclusion is what follows the word then, but it does not include the word then. Okay, so now we have an idea of what a conditional statement is. I am going to give us a real bland, nothing conditional statement. So if P is true, then Q is true. Okay. Better yet, instead of writing if P then Q, I can shorthand it. I can write a P and then this double arrow, and that double arrow is read as implies. So this symbol right here says P implies Q. What does that mean? It basically means if P, then Q. Okay, fine. So now let's take a look at some other vocab words. We have these words converse, inverse, contrapositive. We have to keep them all straight. So if P then Q, or P implies Q is my conditional statement, what the converse does is the converse flips the if and the then around. It flips the hypothesis and the conclusion. So then I get Q implies P. Or if we like the if-then part way of saying it, we could say if Q, then P. So what does the converse do? The converse flips it. Okay, next we have the inverse. So what does the inverse do? So first we're going to go back to the original. Remember, this is my original statement right there. We're going to go back to the original, and what the inverse does is it negates it. So I'm going to write this as not P implies not Q. So again, let's make sure we understand. This is like the Spanish tilde right there, but you read that as not. Okay, so this says not P implies not Q. Or if P is not true, then Q is not true. So let's put the word negates in there so we can see that. The inverse negates the conditional statement. Okay, we have one more word. So the last word we have is contrapositive right there. We need to understand what does the contrapositive do. So the contrapositive kind of puts the converse and the inverse together. It both flips and negates the conditional statement. So what does that look like? That looks like this. Not Q implies not P. So I paused and got that in there so you can see it's written. Okay, the contrapositive flips and negates the original statement. So not Q implies not P. Or if Q is not true, then P is not true. Now notice the color combination I did here. I did that on purpose. Why did I go blue, red, blue? Because, and let me maybe box this one as well. If the conditional statement, okay, if the conditional statement is true, so this one is true, then the contrapositive is also true. Okay, if the conditional statement is false, then the contrapositive is false. These two that I boxed, this one here and this one here, are always true and false together. So if one's true, they're both true statements. If one's false, they're both false statements. Okay, the same goes for the converse and the inverse. If the converse is true, then the inverse is true. If the converse is false, then the inverse is false. So these guys are true and false together. So now you can see why I color coordinate this way. The blues go together, the reds go together. Okay, let's look at an example with actual words and maybe some actual meaning to it. So here's a nice statement. I am making the statement that all rainy days are cloudy. So the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to write that in an if-then statement. I would like to be able to put a condition in there. So it has to start with if. And the key here is to find the verb. If you can find the verb in the sentence, now not always, this is my little hint, this is Miss Cook's hint towards, setting this up in a conditional statement, but almost always when you find that verb, usually what comes before it is your hypothesis, so that should follow the word if, and usually what comes after the verb is your conclusion, which should follow the word then. Okay, now obviously we're going to have to make this work, because I can't just say if all rainy days, then cloudy. That doesn't make sense. So if a day is a rainy day, or if a day is rainy, however you prefer to say that, okay, if a day is rainy, then it is a cloudy day, or then it is cloudy. I'm going to pause and go ahead and write that. Okay, there we have it. So taking this statement, we turn it into if a day is rainy, then it is cloudy. So now we got to remember, what does the converse do? The converse, remember, flips. Flips what? Flips the if and the then. Flips the hypothesis and the conclusion. So I'm going to pause here, or maybe you want to pause here for a second and see if you can figure out what is the converse. Okay, let's see if yours matches mine. If a day is cloudy, then it is rainy. So we took this part right here, that if the day is rainy, we made it the then. We took this part, that it is cloudy, and I made it the if. Now notice, I did not say if it is cloudy. Okay? It is a pronoun. We need the subject actually to show up in the converse. We don't want to write any kind of pronoun, no it, he, she, nothing like that. I don't think you'd ever write he or she, but nothing like that here in the hypothesis. We can use the word it in the conclusion. So not only do you have to flip those around, but you have to keep the subject in the subject of the sentence there. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the inverse. Remember, the inverse negates the conditional statement. What does that mean? It puts the word not in there. So if a day is not rainy, then it is not cloudy. So for everyone who wasn't quite sure on the last slide what exactly the negating means, or what the word negates means, okay, it's a verb. It changes the verb from is to is not. Okay, and again here, is to is not. Okay, so we have one piece left, the contrapositive. What does the contrapositive do? Everything. Okay, longest word, longest bunch of string of actions here. So I have to take a look at my conditional. I have to flip the conditional around, so flip the if and the then, but I also have to negate both the left side and the right side. So maybe take a second here, I'll pause for you and give you a little bit of time to see if you can go ahead and write that. Okay, check and see if yours matches mine. If a day is not cloudy, then it is not rainy. Now, you don't have to underline the word not and emphasize it. I know that I emphasize it when I say it, and since I'm teaching it, I like to really draw focus to that. Okay, the inverse and the contrapositive have to be negated. So again, look at the color combination I wrote. We're going to take a look at our true-false aspect to each statement. So the first statement, if a day is rainy, then it is cloudy. I think we could all agree that that's got to be true. You can't have rain without clouds. So if it's raining, there must be clouds. Okay, next. If a day is cloudy, then it's rainy. Well, that's not true. That's false. A day could be cloudy and not rain. It could be partially cloudy and not rain. So it's a false statement. Okay, next I'm on the inverse. If a day is not raining, then it's not cloudy. Okay, that is false. A day doesn't have to rain to have clouds. It's kind of the same idea as what we were talking about in the converse. I can have clouds and not rain. So if I don't have rain, I could still have clouds. All right, contrapositive. If a day is not cloudy, then it's not rainy. That is a true statement. Okay, if you do not have clouds, then there's no clouds to produce rain. So that's true. Look at how these played out. The two that are in purple, and we said this on the last slide, the conditional and contrapositive are true or false together. In this case, they're both true. Here, the converse and the inverse are both false because they have to have the same true-false. So hopefully you now feel pretty comfortable with conditional, converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Okay, so it's time to take everything we've done so far and try to figure out how we can put it together. I have 4 statements here. We're good at reading them. We remember that this is not, okay, fine. I need to draw a conclusion. So basically what I want to do is I kind of want to put these 4 things together and almost merge them into a single statement. Okay, in order to do that, I need to do 2 steps before I'm ready to get my conclusion. So step 1. We need to figure out which letters only show up once. So when I look at these 4 statements, I see 2 Y's, I see 2 V's, I see 2 Z's. The 2 letters that only show up once are the X and the W. What does that mean? That means that my answer is going to have an X and a W in it. Now, I don't know the order. I have 4 possibilities here. It could be X implies W. X implies not W. It could be W implies X or W implies not X. I am not sure which of those 4 it is, but I know that my answer is going to be going to use an X and a W. Okay, so this leads me now to step 2. Step 2 is to list the contrapositives of each of these original statements. Now, why the contrapositives? Quickly remember that if these original statements are true, then the contrapositives are true as well. Okay, that is not true for the inverse and converse, so those are not options. It must be the contrapositives that we list out. Now, you may want to pause the video here for a second and see if you can come up with the contrapositives before I do. Okay, time to check your statements. See if your contrapositives match mine. Did you flip them and negate them? Okay, if yours don't match mine, take a second and fix them. Okay, time for step 3, our last and final step. Now we're ready to link our statements all together. Now here's the key. You can use either the original statements or the contrapositives, but not both. Okay, I'm not trying to yell, but let me say it again. The original or the contrapositive, but not both. So what does that look like? Remember, we knew that our answers were going to be X and W. So I am going to start with the statement that has either X or W. I could start with either this one or this one on the left side. I'm going to just use statement number 3, and I'm going to start by saying X implies not V. Now I've used this piece right here, but I'm going to cross both that and its contrapositive off. It's done. Okay, can't use it anymore. So now I need a statement that's going to start with the right side, which is not V. Sorry, bad not. Okay, not V implies, oh gosh, here it is, statement 1. So on the right side here, it said not V implies Y. So now I'm going to link that to another statement. I'm going to say Y implies, and I have to figure out of my 2 statements that are left, my 2 options, okay, the second line says Y implies Z right here. So remember, when I use the left side, I cross off the right side as well. And now I need a statement that starts with Z. So Z implies, and I have it here on the right side, Z implies not W. Okay, I've used it. And so quick check, make sure you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. And we are just about done. So the linking part, this is just kind of helpful so you can kind of see it. These are the same, so I'm going to cross them out. These are the same, I'm going to cross them out. These are the same, I'm going to cross them out. Now this, quickly, I should say, is not how the book will show it, but I have found after years and years of teaching that this really visually helps students figure it out. And here's what we can see. I can see that X implies not W. That is my answer. Now it should be pointed out that if this was a free response kind of question, that would be your answer, no problems. Okay, but on a multiple choice test, you must be careful because that might not be there, but the answer might be there. Remember, we got to choose at the beginning one of these statements. Okay, maybe I chose to start with W. If I chose to start with W, well, I don't want to have to rework this to figure out the other answer. I don't have to rework it. I have to realize that either this is the answer or the contrapositive again. The contrapositive of this statement could be the answer, in which case my answer could be W implies not X. Now, if it is not multiple choice, I do not need you to list this second one. I just need you to realize that it is an option. Okay, on a non-multiple choice test, I would take either one for full credit. You do not need to list both of them. So, what do we do when the problem I have asks me to draw a conclusion and I have all of these words? Okay, the words themselves are probably a little overwhelming. So we're going to condense this if-then statement down into a single letter for the hypothesis, a single letter for the conclusion, and I'm going to use that double arrow or that double staffed arrow, which is the implies symbol. So hopefully it makes sense to you. I'm going to use B here, I'm going to use T here, P here, and J here. I'm going to give you a second to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can come up with your 3 statements in a much shorter version. Okay, so how'd you do? Do your statements match my statements? B implies T, P implies not J implies not T. Okay, our next step is to go ahead and list the contrapositives for each of these 3 statements. So you may want to pause the video here and see if you can come up with your contrapositives to those 3 statements. So how'd you do? Do your contrapositives match my contrapositives? Not T implies not B, J implies not P, and T implies J. Hopefully they match, and we're ready for the next step. So now I'm going to go back to my original 3. I don't really have to look at the contrapositives. I can just focus in here and try to figure out which letter only shows up one time. Okay, I see the B only shows up one time, and what else? It looks like the P only shows up one time. So I know my answer is going to have a B and a P in it. Here, what I don't know is what order do the letters show up in my answer. Is it going to be if B then P, if B then not P, if not P then B? And I think you get where I'm going with this. I don't have any idea looking at it, the order of these 2 letters, but I know those are the letters, so it's kind of, like a starting point and an ending point, or maybe a starting point and an ending point. It gives me some idea of the flow of this proof. Yes, I think I just said proof. It is a logic problem, but we're going to think of it kind of like a proof, I guess. So starting out, I'm going to start with B implies T. There's my first step. Remember, I can take the left side or the right side. I cannot take both. So once I take either side, I have to cross that whole row out. Now I need a statement that starts with T. So when I look down on the third line, T implies J, right? On the right side, the contrapositive. Okay, so now I need, hopefully my last statement on either side, one of them has to start with J implies. So J implies not P. Okay, and then what you'll hear me say in class a lot, it's just kind of a phrase I throw around there. Let's cross out where they link up. So they link there, those drop. Not really, but it's kind of an okay way to think of it. And then my final answer, there's the B and there's the P. So my final answer is B implies not P. But again, remember, this could be a multiple choice question on a test, and we'd have to take into account the fact that it could have been P implies not B. So either one is acceptable. I do not need both. And hopefully now you feel comfortable with drawing a conclusion from these various conditional statements.